What industry is a lot shadier than it seems? My dad knows a story from someone who works for a nationwide grocery chain. They have to deal with an Italian mafia to import balsamic vinegar. More people died last year over vanilla in Madagascar than cocaine in South America. They've even coined the term vanilla murder. Farmers hire armed mercenaries to guard their crops from thieves near harvest time. And if one is caught, well, let's just say it's in response to all the farmers that were killed by thieves for the same reason. The maritime industry. Most of the big companies do things by the book and treat crews well because they're afraid of lawsuits and unions. But many smaller mom-and-pop companies break laws and violate safety regulations with reckless abandon because they're not as visible and can stay under the radar, so to speak. It's very common for a small company to ask a captain crew to do something illegal and dangerous in order to increase profit. And for the captain crew to comply out of fear of losing their jobs. And that's just the U.S. maritime industry. Sailors from poorer nations who work on ships are often fed little more than rice and cheap ramen for months at a time and paid pennies for their backbreaking work. I love running tugs for a living. But the industry as a whole is rife with shady business. A lot of hobby fish importing is pretty shady. You have farms of certain types of fish like bettas in some areas of the world that are run with the fish in horrible conditions. Which is why a lot of the ones you get in a major chain store are sick before you even bring them home. The stores will blame the fish being stressed. But I've ordered and received hundreds of fish from small breeders, sellers and outside of Cory catfish that really enjoy committing suiciding by poisoning their own water. The fish arrive healthy and fine. Outside of boutique fish farming, the way some wild fish are caught is just horrible. The trappers will lightly poison the water supply to knock out the fish. Then scoop them out of the water without a care for that area's ecosystem. This has led to depletion of some natural species to the point they are now endangered. Lastly, boutique fish sellers, major chains do not give half a rat's what happens to the fish in the end. This means that people who buy fish like plecos, bettas, goldfish, etc., end up getting sick of them and dumping them in local waterways to supposedly get rid of the problem. So in some areas, these fish have completely destroyed the local water ecology because, like other invasive land species, they were never meant to be there. One of the worst offenders is the lionfish in Florida. It's venomous and has no natural predators, so its population has exploded out of control. Dietary supplements. It's gotten better, but there's still a lot of half-truths and whole lies. Not all that long ago it was seriously like the wild, wild west. Eyeglasses. You have no idea the snow job they put most people through when it comes to buying them. It's far, far worse than trying to buy a new car from a dealership. Wholesale frames are about $5 minus 20. Wholesale lens blanks are another $10. Any kind of dip coating, UV, tinting, etc. is negligible cost and effort to apply, literally pennies. To top it off, they don't even do a whole lot in-house. But send it to labs, which are basically sweatshops that can take up to 2 to 3 weeks when labor time is literally under 5 minutes. Instead of training real opticians and technicians, they're just glorified sales staff now. Most of the time they don't even bother with proper measurement for PD. Frame width, or arm fitting, was an optician in the early 90s. I'm horrified at what the business has become. All industries are shadier than they seem. I used to work for a flute manufacturer and it was shady as hell. Recruitment industry. Some examples: fake jobs to lure candidates for registration, KPIs, trainee negotiation tactics of telling a candidate there is a better candidate who wants less, so we recommend less for you to get the job. Especially for contractors. Coveting off pitching and telling a candidate they have been sent to a line manager but in reality they haven't been submitted because 2 others from same recruiter have already been in interviews. If they fail you may get a chance. Lot of coded ways to put on a database info on your age. Non-professional related appearance. And ethnicity. Ageism. Sexism. Racism is rampant in hiring. A lot more dodgy stuff behind the scenes. Source: was involved with the industry on a global level for over 15 years before I changed careers. Trucking. The margins are razor thin and so everyone is trying to nickel and dime each other constantly. The drivers lie to their dispatchers. The dispatchers lie to the brokers. The brokers lie to the clients. All of this for like $50 minus 100 sometimes. Domain names. There's so much shady stuff that goes on when it comes to domain names: cyber squatting, sketchy registrars, domain hijacking, scams, predatory pricing, etc. Worked at a domain registrar. Can confirm. Domain squatting is a thing, and so is customers trying to blame you if they make a dumb third-party decision. Here's an example. The registrar I worked at had a rather unique domain name that they sold at a rather interesting time. I can't say what it was, but let's just say it had to do with a certain European country leaving a certain union. And the domain was a TLD with just that word in it. The day after everything went down, the former owner contacted us, passed account security, provided ID, and told us to change the owner details to another person. He was all smug about how he made thousands off of this sale. Calls back half an hour later, and what happened? The new owner stiffed him. Didn't pay a penny. But because the guy had called, gone through security, changed the owner details on the domain, and pushed the button to transfer the domain to this other person at another registrar, it was out of our hands and with the registry. The deed was done, and this new person got a nice new domain with a very hard to get hold of name for nothing. For the record, I'm part of that country and staunchly against what's happened. So being the person who authorized that details change and set the transfer in motion was a moment of malicious compliance I'll remember forever. Recycling. Dirty little secret of the recycling industry is how much is either shipped overseas and dumped in a landfill or just sent directly to your local landfill. The good news is the toxic stuff is what is sent overseas. Well, good news if you're not in a poor country, I guess. Recycling is a much more palatable than selling our trash to China as raw materials. Single quote. Rating services like Yelp refuse to advertise, and your good reviews magically get rearranged. Hey, look, if you want to do that and be transparent, I get it. But most every business owner knows how scummy this is, and most clients just have no idea. I have a business that isn't something that would usually be looked for on Yelp. They called and I just froze. Luckily, I do long-term rentals and was sold out. Explained I wouldn't have an opening for months. They seemed to leave me alone. Yet they have my business on the front page of Google search under the wrong category. Pet industry. Basement puppy mills and dogs that are so inbred they can hardly breathe. There are plenty of ethical breeders out there, and some unlicensed breeders are ethical even if in a legal gray zone, but the conditions of some of the so-called puppy mills can be really bad. Sometimes when breeds are mixed and the pup gets the recessive genes the breeders weren't looking for, they straight up euthanize it because they know it won't sell. Not to mention how many purebreds are actually not pure at all and sold as shady CBD. Lot of predatory companies making subpar products with questionable raw materials and then marking it way the F up and selling it as a miracle cure to vulnerable and ill-educated consumers. Usually have a high-power legal team on deck, but pay their workers and no benefits. Doesn't the beauty industry have a problem with child labor? I remember watching a thing where a journalist goes to India to see the mines where children mine some sort of mineral to make bronzer. Yes, they mine mica, and it's in almost every beauty product. It adds shimmer to the product. Mattress industry. Specifically, mattress firm. Cruise ships. I was told I was having a minimum of 1 day off every week and work normal hours 8 to 10 h per day with a good pay and good pre-paid tips. I ended up working 30 days in a row. Over 400 hours. For $1,600 with tips included. This company I was working for was called Scenic Cruises, ship was called MS Scenic Crystal, which was an Australian company working over a Swiss company going under a Maltese flag. Sailing in Central Europe. That's how I understood it anyways. They deliberately did this so they could break international laws. I counted at least 5 that they broke. Biggest scam company I ever worked for. I resigned after my first month. The police boarded the ship every once in a while because they knew this, but they couldn't do because they had no jurisdiction over the ship. I was forced to work with a 39 Celsius fever. I really wanna F this company up, but I literally have no idea how. And hiring an international lawyer or whatever is too expensive. They are also huge polluters and dump waste into the ocean. Avocado farms. Most of the farms in Central America are taken over by the cartel because of how much money is in selling avocados. This will probably get buried. But glitter, a manager of one of the biggest glitter manufacturers, Glitter X, said in a 2018 interview that most of the glitter they make goes to one buyer for a single industrial use. When asked who the buyer was and why they need so much glitter, she said, "Oh, I definitely can't disclose that." When asked why, she said, "Because they don't want anybody to know it's glitter." Ever since this interview, people have been trying to guess what company or industry secretly uses most of the world's glitter and why they want to keep that use under wraps. Advertising. We don't really give a f if it works. We already got your money. Even better, it's practically impossible to say it didn't work. Your sales stayed flat? Just think how much they would have dropped if you didn't run that ad campaign. Jewelry, gems, diamonds is pretty dark. Medical research. The only way people can keep their jobs at a lot of the institutions with better facilities is to create a steady stream of high-impact publications. Now, research doesn't work that way. You get the supported results whenever it happens. But that's not how hiring, promotion, or tenure committees see it. This means that, in order to ensure you get enough of these desirable publications in the right period, you have to do all sorts of corner cutting. You publish before the results are well supported. You publish results that are unrepeatable. You write papers in the smallest possible units of the work so people need to wait years to see what the full results are. In the process, junior scientists' careers can be made or absolutely destroyed in this system. A lucky student who gets the right project can find themselves as first author on a very high-impact paper and be set for years. But an experienced and previously successful postdoc can be ruined when they can't produce the results the senior scientists want. Or just not in the right time frame. The senior scientists rarely have the time to do, or carefully look over, the actual research because they are so busy actually writing the papers and the grants needed to fund the work in the first place. If reviewers catch these issues with the papers, the authors just shop the paper to other journals until it passes and/or they put up such a pitched battle with the editors they just let it pass. Sometimes the EDS feel they can't handle the pressure. Sometimes are just convinced by the bombast. All of us have seen published papers that we rejected for other journals earlier because the work is poorly done or is just incorrect. To be clear, the authors really believe in their papers even when they are aware of their shortcomings. And they usually have plenty of evidence that papers just as problematic or worse have been published. So why not theirs, on top of everything? The universities and research institutions work over these findings with their press department, and by the time it makes it to journalists, the story is so distorted that it's barely related to the actual work. Bloggers digest this even further and the misperceptions have spread all over a much wider community. Even other scientists in different areas of the same field will absorb this news as truth. These are the scientists on those committees mentioned above, demanding a particular kind of result. As a result of all this, medical research is much more inefficient and expensive than it needs to be. However, scientists need to jobs, grant money, and good facilities to do their work at all. And the system makes it clear what they need to do to ensure those necessities. So they oblige. Eyewear. Luxottica owns a large majority of eyewear and holds a virtual monopoly on the market. They control all prices and will crush competition. The only reason eyeglasses and sunglasses are so expensive is because of price gouging. As a chef owner, I would say delivery services like Grubhub. They take 30% of the sale, leaving the restaurant with basically $0 in profit. And their customer support is a joke. It's like they hate us. F them. Never again. Not an industry. But higher academia is badly broken. Some of the smartest people are some of the most badly exploited. Old tenured professors limit the number of faculty many departments can have, forcing people to work as postdocs forever, effectively doing all the work the professor should be doing in the first place. Meager pay and long hours, plus constant pressure makes postdocs some of the most depressed people. The grad students are no better either. A lot of the times grad students don't complain about ill treatment, harassment and outright bullying, as they don't want to jeopardize their prospects of graduating. If you're a foreigner, this situation becomes even worse, whether you're a grad student or a postdoctoral researcher. SX Toys. It's horribly unregulated and there are tons of manufacturers that use unsafe materials to make their toys. SX Toys has lots of great info for people looking to get any. Yep. One of my first toys reeked of cheap plastics. When I opened the package I thought it would go away. But it never did. Didn't even get less smelly. Just kept off going for months. My dumbass still used it a couple of times, probably going to die of cancer. I've heard tell the personal lubricant manufacturers are similarly unregulated and not necessarily looking out for consumers' safety. Fast food is whack. Food service in general. Honestly. I was a waitress for 10 years at various restaurants. But they all had something in common: there was no paid time off. Meaning if you got sick and had bills to pay, you were going to work. Not only that, but even if you decided you'd take the day off and lose the money, you were threatened with being fired unless you got a doctor's note. Which none of us could get, since we didn't have health insurance. Really wild stuff.